What is up, my bodyweight warriors, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to go through how to train the handstand. We're not going to be talking about the training itself. We've got plenty of videos on how to balance the handstand, how to kick up, how to use the wall. I will link to as many as I can in the description down below. But today we're going to be talking about how exactly you go about training it. What should a training plan or what should a training structure look like? This is one of the most commonly commented or commonly asked questions that I get on this channel and on Instagram, so I thought I'd make a whole video dedicated to it. If you want some really specific instruction on it and you want an actual program, then I highly recommend you check out my app Tribe, which will be linked again in the description down below. We've just added 8 brand new handstand routines that can take you from no handstand to a decent handstand and being able to do shapes and every step in between, as well as a structure and a program for you to actually follow along. And we will be continuing to add to it as well, so I highly recommend you check that one out. Right, so there's a few things we need to consider when it comes to training the handstand. Number one is training the handstand is not like strength training. It's a different type of movement. It provides a different stimulus and requires a different training method. When we train the handstand, it is highly neurological. It is all about skill acquisition. Yes, there's some neurological elements of strength training, but the impact it has on muscle damage, etc., means that we need longer in between to rest. However, the handstands aren't as intensive when it comes to muscle damage. It's more that skill acquisition, that neurological element, which means we can train things a lot more often, but we still need to abide by the same rules of trying not to overtrain. With that being said, there's 2 main things that we need to consider when it comes to training the handstand. Number one is how badly do you want it? Are you one of those people who the only goal is to do the handstand, you're willing to put all your time and effort into it? Or are you the sort of person who kind of wants to do a handstand, but you're busy doing other skills, other strength, other flexibility things alongside, maybe your own sport? Number 2, we need to think about our training age. Have we been training handstands for 6 months or have we been training handstands for 6 days? Both those things are going to impact on how we can train the handstand. So with those 2 in mind, let's look at the minimum effective dose, the minimum amount of work that you can do for the handstand. So for me, the minimum amount that you can do is 3 days per week. This works great for beginners, people who are new to handstands, and people who have it as a sort of backwards goal, not necessarily super important. The reason for it is it gives plenty of rest in between, so it gives you recovery for your wrists if you're new to it, so you're not going to overstress them too much. As I said, it also works well for people who are sort of interested in handstands because it still has a decent amount of frequency, but it's not going to impact too much on your time that you could spend on other things. In terms of time possession, this is going to depend very much on you as an individual, but I would say give it a good 30 minutes to begin with. 10 minutes, 20 minutes is not really going to cut it. You need to warm up. You need to open your shoulders, you need to spend some time on your hands doing balance. The more time the better. I would say 30 minutes is really a minimum, and then you can kind of take it as far as you want. But again, pay attention to how you feel, how you recover. Don't want to overstress the wrists too much. Even if you're really keen on learning the handstand, I would recommend initially starting with maybe 3 days at most. It will honestly save you a little bit of time, especially if you get injured. So if you're not an absolute beginner, and if it is a bit more of a priority to you, then I think 4 days per week works quite nicely for most people. It's not too much time to spend in the gym, but it's plenty of time to spend training and getting better at the skill. The best thing about doing 4 days per week is that you can do 2 days on and 1 day off. This means that we get consecutive days, which means we don't have to spend the next session just relearning the things that we learned from the last session. Consecutive training days is kind of the secret to handstand. So I think 4 days per week works well. And I would do this maybe when you have a little bit of handstand experience and your wrists have kind of got used to standing on things, and also if you have a lot of other training outside of your handstand work. Again, timing, I would say 30 minutes is a minimum, and you can work up to sort of 60, maybe 90 minutes as you get more advanced. Next, we have diehards and advanced people. So this one I would actually recommend not sticking to so many sessions per week as a structure, but I would recommend using so many days on and then 1 day off. So initially this will be 2 days on, 1 day off, which is the same as 4 days per week. And then over time, you can build it up to maybe 3 days or 4 days or 5 days, like my friend Ulrich, who's a very high level hand balancer, depending on your own ability to recover when it comes to the handstand and also how much experience you have. If you had a lot of experience, your body's very used to doing handstands, it's not going to be as taxing. You can do more, you can do it more often than somebody who's just getting into it. So that would kind of be my recommendation in terms of how much per week you should be doing. Obviously, as we get more advanced, we can make sessions longer. Ultimately, time spent doing the training is the best way to improve handstands. So as long as you can recover fine, spend as much time doing it as possible, whether that means 2 or 3 hour sessions. It's kind of what's needed to get really good at handstands. So that's how many times a week I think you should train the handstand, 3, 4 or more times per week. Let's discuss another couple of quick questions that I usually get asked. Number one is, when should you do your training? You should always do your training, the handstand training, as the first thing in your training session. If you're going to do strength training, always do it afterwards, because it's less on the kind of neurological, the skill acquisition end of the spectrum. So it requires less of that mental function, which is the first thing to go. So you can do your handstands first, maybe take 10, 15 minutes of a break, and then jump into your strength session. That's absolutely fine. It just means you might spend a couple hours in the gym. You can always split those 2 sessions up, and you can do, an hour of handstands in the morning and an hour of strength training in the afternoon. Also works very well. You can also add your handstands in on rest days. As I said, it's less intensive. It causes much less muscle damage than normal strength training. It's something you can do on a rest day, but just be aware that if you did upper body the day before, it will make your handstands worse the day after. Finally, the last thing I want to bring up is training handstands every day, or doing a little bit every single day, like 10 to 15 minutes. I initially began doing handstands like this, and I think it was okay. I think it's not a bad idea. However, I do think there are some negatives. I think spending longer per session and doing less sessions is the better way to progress with handstands. That's what I use with clients, and that's what I've heard countless other teachers recommend. So I think I would stick to that initially. If you do have the craving, you just want to do some handstands in your rest days in between, I don't think that's an issue at all. Just pay attention to how you recover, how those wrists feel, and you'll be grand. But that has basically been it for this week, guys. I kind of discussed a lot in this video. It's a bit of a rambling video, one of those talking videos, but I thought for those who are interested in handstands, you will find this one very useful. If you did find it useful, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know what your handstand training looks like and if this video was helpful for you. If it was, hit that thumbs up button and support the channel. I would highly appreciate your support. Right next to it is also the subscribe button if you want to join the Bodyweight Warrior tribe as we approach 300,000 subscribers, which is pretty mad. But that has been it for this week, guys. I'll catch you in the next episode. Have a strong week and peace.